So I think one of the things that's really important to understand when it comes to the filming of the Rings of Power is that the Tolkien estate, and namely Simon Tolkien, holds the right to veto any decisions that the Amazon team decides to put into the show. And if you have paid attention to the interviews with Payne and McKay, they've said that one of the things Simon Tolkien did with them was help them navigate around the rights issues because they don't have the rights to the Silmarillion. And now I covered this in a previous episode, the rights that they have and what they have access to, and the fact that there's one-off things they can negotiate with the family for. But for the most part, the Silmarillion is off limits, and since they're crafting this story around the Second Age, they have to do things in a weird way of working around only what's in the appendices and the Hobbit novels. And with that comes the caveat, which I've talked about in a previous video, that ultimately the buck stops with the Tolkien estate, and in this case, Simon Tolkien, as far as we understand. And that's kind of going to be what we're going about in today's Rings of Power rant video. I'm Tim Anderson, aka Renville, the bearded dwarven princess, and we're going to be diving into this today because I think it's a fascinating look at, a lot of people like to put all the blame on Amazon, but that's really not the case. Amazon does hold part of the blame, the showrunners hold a lot of the blame, but also the Tolkien estate bears a lot of the blame, or I should say the Tolkien estate under Simon Tolkien, because he appears to be the person who is at the forefront of approving these creative decisions that have happened since Christopher Tolkien passed away. If this is your first time here and you've never done one of my rant discussion videos, welcome aboard. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon. It's a great way to hang out and have fun. These are always done as premieres at 6 a.m. Central Time, and I'm always down there in the chat hanging out with people, so feel free to ask questions in real time, so on and so forth. And don't forget, every Monday morning at 11 a.m. Central Time is the latest episode of Mondays in Middle-earth as I read through The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and the Silmarillion. We just wrapped up the Two Towers. Actually, the episode that's airing today after this is the recap on the Two Towers, and then we're moving into the Return of the King. So hopefully we'll wrap up that novel by the end of the year, and then we're getting into the Silmarillion. But in the meantime, let's dive into this article, which is over at Enid This is an older piece from 2019, but it is very relevant because nothing has changed in the rights since then. But I did want to talk about what exactly is going on here. This is when Tom Shippey was still involved with the production. By the way, I love this map of Numenor. It's such an amazing, in my mind, getting a look at things. It's much better than some of the maps we've seen since then on the show, but I like this one. Anyway, it says here, and again, remember, this is an older piece, but the relevant component is the contract that was negotiated with the Tolkien estate under Christopher Tolkien, which, as of this writing, was still in place, and as far as we understand, is still in place, unless it has been further adapted by Simon Tolkien and the Tolkien estate ever since Chris's passing in 2020. But the gist of this is that, according to Tom Shippey at the time of this writing, the Tolkien estate has insisted that the main shape of the Second Age is not altered. So during this period, Sauron tries to reform Middle-earth for the better, but falls into evil, becoming a powerful and oppressive ruler. And according to the quotation from him at the time, Sauron invades Eriador, is forced back by a Númenórean expedition, then they return to Númenor. He then, with him in tow as a prisoner. He then corrupts the Númenóreans and seduces them to break the ban of the Valar. All of this, the course of history, must remain the same. Shippey at the time pointed out that although the broad strokes of the history of the Second Age are established, there are plenty of unanswered questions about the events of the period, such as what Sauron did after the fall of Morgoth. Amazon can take creative license to create its own story within this history as long as it doesn't contradict Tolkien's writings. So this is what we get right here. If I understand things, and this may, I don't know if this is true, this may play into what the showrunners have said about the second season. If you watched Sunday's episode, yesterday's episode, I talked about how they made the claim that season 2 is more canonically accurate to the books than season 1. So if I had to guess, and that's what I'm doing right here, is I'm making an estimated, an educated guess. I would say that their first season was this right here. What did Sauron do after the fall of Morgoth. And it said here that Amazon had creative license to tell its own story within this history as long as it doesn't contradict Tolkien's writings. And while I would argue that there were plenty of elements where we contradicted aspects of Tolkien's lore, like the mithril retcon, or the fact that, elves are suddenly mortal and can die and their spirits don't go into Valinor and all this other stuff. There was plenty of what I saw as lore breaking, but apparently Simon Tolkien and the Tolkien estate didn't see it that way. Because remember, they have the power of veto, which is discussed in this article, and I've discussed it in a previous video that I did. They hold the power of veto over creative decisions. So ultimately, if something has broken any of the lore, the buck stops with the Tolkien estate, not with Amazon. But anyway, making an educated guess here, they have used season 1 to do their little, this is what Sauron was up to after the fall of Morgoth. He tried to recreate the world. It didn't work. He had a battle with Adar. Adar thought he killed him. He came back as Halbrand. He did this whole song and dance of going to Numenor and seeing what the Numenorians had done, which may have been what inspires him to go, oh, I need to go back to Numenor. And so now second season is going to be him waging war, because we have heard from the showrunners that they plan on making the second season all about Sauron. They said while first season was all about Galadriel, her motivations, her inner workings, everything else, the second season is going to be more focused on Sauron. How they plan to do that, I don't know. I'm assuming Charlie Vickers is going to remain as Sauron, as Halbrand. I don't know how they're doing that. I don't know how that would work, considering that if he's going to seduce the elves, he would need to, I don't know. They may be throwing all that. The big thing is that the Numenorians need to capture him and bring him back to Numenor to follow the established lore and history. Well, they know who he is now, and the Numenorians have pledged to return with an army in force, and Galadriel is going to be there to meet them. So we know that that's going to be happening in season 2. So maybe at the end of season 2 is when he gets captured and drugged back to Numenor, and then season 3 is going to be the fall of Numenor. I don't know. I have no idea what they've planned out for this. I'm just making guesses at this point. The Tolkien estate maintains power of veto over any content in the show, Shippey says, and is willing to nix anything that doesn't fit with Tolkien's vision. That's very important. That has not changed as far as we understand. None of that has changed. That was in place before Christopher Tolkien's death. It was in place when he signed the paperwork. I don't see why Simon Tolkien would have removed that element of it at play, but he's definitely, in my mind, has been using that to his advantage to be able to make these, helping them navigate the rights issues, as they've clearly said. In any case, he says here, the first and third ages of Middle-earth in which the books are set are both off-limits to the TV show. It says don't expect to see hobbits, Gondorians, and many familiar faces in the new adaptation. And that actually changed, because we did eventually get the proto-hobbits, or the Harfoots, which are their versions of hobbits. Harfeet, not Harfoots, whose hearts are bigger than their feet. Yar! Take the wheels off their cart. But at the same time, we leave no one behind. But we have a book that says we've left all these people behind. Oh my God, the contradictions. In any case, I think this is a very interesting look into, and I know it's not, this is an older piece, and some people are going to look at, why don't you pull something modern? Because this is the last thing we have that talks about the rights. And this was when Shippey was still involved, and Shippey was out there making very public statements about, hey, this is what the contract says. These are the rights that they have. He was the front man for the Tolkien estate during the time that Christopher Tolkien was still alive. Remember, they didn't fire him until after Chris Tolkien had passed. And suddenly it went from Tom Shippey being the front man to Simon Tolkien being the front man, and the showrunners working directly hand in hand with Simon Tolkien. And in my mind, that is because Tom Shippey was with Chris Tolkien, wanting to hold him to a higher standard of accuracy according to the lore, whereas Simon Tolkien is very happy to just go off book and just be like, man, do whatever you want. Let's just keep those paychecks going. Come on, man, need to get paid. That's just my opinion. I don't have any factual evidence for that. It's what the data suggests. Who knows? If you got to the end here, you like what you saw, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and hopefully you have been inspired to support the channel by this content. I've been doing this for a long time. I've been full-time since June of 2022, thanks to the support of all of these amazing people who are members here on YouTube as well as over at our Patreon page. So check all that stuff out. The easiest way to support on these premieres and live streams, super chats. I'm down there hanging out with you. You can do it there. You can also do a super thanks after the video is uploaded. That's down there. And there's 3 tiers of membership. Lots of cool stuff that we do for members. And as I mentioned, the Patreon page for my wife and my brother are working on. It's a 5th edition tabletop setting and world. It's a point and click adventure game and a book series. So check all that stuff out. Don't forget, Mondays in Middle Earth at 11 a.m. And all the other stuff we do here on YouTube, from House of the Dragon to Star Wars to Willow to other stuff and beyond. See you next time. Stay safe, everybody. Happy reading and happy watching.